we see both players taking their seats now. Life Coach representing Team Evil Geniuses and Freddy representing your very own swim, Team Gwent.
Yeah, indeed. These two players are right now regarded as maybe the two best players in the world. Life Coach hailing from a veteran career, honestly, in the field, coming from several years of playing Hearthstone at a top professional level, and before that, poker as well. Whereas Freddy has the best tournament track record in Gwent to date.
Yeah, Freddy, I mean, so young and already so much success. He won Gwent Slam #1. He won Gwent Open #2. I mean, he's been proven already on ladder and in tournaments that he has what it takes to really start winning these tournaments very early on, which is, I mean, great to see. I mean, only 18 and already dominating. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Both of these players, of course, champions at previous tournaments. Life Coach at the previous Challenger, but then taking a sabbatical from competitive play to really just focus in on this, and of course, running his own community event, Gwent Slam, like you mentioned, one of which Freddy has won. So Life Coach is definitely aware of Freddy as a competitor, but you got to wonder, has Freddy seen enough of Life Coach playing to know how to play around him?
I think the important thing to talk about here is not only the players, but also their decks, you know, the weapons they have for this matchup, and some very interesting things in terms of bans as well, I think. I mean, we see pretty similar factions from both players, but not similar leaders. We see, for example, in Northern Realms, the difference there with Radovid against Life Coach's Hensel, for example. And of course, we see Unseen Elder. We see both players running the same leader, but very different decks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's important to remember that when you're in this tournament format, it's not just always about playing the individual games, but you have to play the tournament as well. One thing to remember is that because this is Conquest format, which means that winning decks get eliminated, you need to win with all your decks, it actually makes more sense to focus on your weaker decks than the stronger ones. This is a format of weakest link competition, and that's exactly what Freddy's strategy revolves around. He is targeting Nilfgaard. He has all of his decks prepared to shut down Life Coach's Nilfgaard deck, and of course that means that of course he's targeting the weakest link and just trying to smash that out.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Nilfgaard's kind of the one that people approach the most casually almost, right? Because Nilfgaard Spy's been around for what, 3 or 4 months in the meta now, and it's just something that people just rock up to with tournaments. They go, yeah, this is an incredibly powerful deck, it will be banned, or I'll play and I'll win. So
exactly.
For Freddy to go after a deck that is seen as such a staple of the very top tier is a really interesting strategy.
Brave.
But echoing Life Coach's point, can you really counter Nilfgaard? I mean, Nilfgaard is a deck that does so many things properly. I mean, card advantage, tempo, finishers. It really has all the, I think, the key points that a deck needs to really have success in Gwent. And can you really counter that?
Well, we see matchups like Uridin and whatnot do very well against it, but no Uridin from Freddy. And we see here Freddy's had his Emir taken out of contention, and Life Coach has his Henselt banned. So there we see Freddy choosing to eliminate arguably the strongest coin flip deck in the game and going after that Emir.
Yeah, I think that was Freddy's plan going into this whole thing, just smashing out Henselt and just planning very meticulously about that one ban. He's not planning on changing that anytime soon. But I gotta ask you guys, what do you think about Freddy's Curse deck that we saw yesterday? The Crack on Crate deck that revels around Curse synergy with Berserker Marauders, because that may be one of the most unique decks we've seen so far in this tournament.
Yeah, it's a deck that not many people are playing. It got some play at the start of the patch when new cards got introduced, like Herald Houndsnout. A very cool card. People thought, you know, oh, this looks cool, let's try it out. And it was pretty powerful at the start. People kind of started playing around some of the, you know, key cards in that deck, like Herald. And now it's been relegated to maybe a tier 2 or high tier 2 standing, but Freddy believes in it, and we're going to see if it really brings him success as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He is the one in the semi-finals of Challenger, playing for a spot in the finals later on, so who knows, maybe his faith is not misplaced. It'll be an interesting one to see, though, for sure. I think Curse tends to be like a very explosive power deck, so it'll be very interesting to see how it performs.
Yeah, I think in Freddy's testing, it was shown to perform very well against Nilfgaard, which is why he brought it in this lineup. We'll have to see, though, if it has what it takes, because that's actually a bit of a disputed matchup right now, whether Cursed is favored against Spy Nilfgaard or not.
Also important to note with the coin flip and the bans as well, taking that into account, we're going to see Life Coach going first in this first game, going with he has the blue coin, and Freddy will be going second with the red coin, which is very important to note, especially if this game goes to a best of 5, to a 5th game in this series.
Yeah, it makes serious differences, you know. We just saw Colomon, though, perfectly handle a series where he was starting on blue, so it can be done, but it is undeniably an advantage. But I'm just absolutely can't wait to get into this matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
That is a great example of, you know, just being able to overcome that kind of disadvantage.
Yeah, I think Colomon just performed absolutely spectacularly, so it'll be interesting to see if we can see a repeat and see the blue coin come out on top in this semi-final, but I think the coin flip system's generally been really good for the tournament. It doesn't seem to be overbearing one way or the other.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things it adds is the level of depth of strategy. It really makes you think differently about the decks you have to bring. A lot of people bring Henselt and Aridin because those are decks that revolve a lot better. Well, they go a lot better if you can control the flow of the coin flip.
All right, and here we go into our first game. We are going to be seeing Monsters versus Nilfgaard. It is going to be Life Coach on the Nilfgaard and Freddy Babes on the Unseen Elder.
And the Unseen Elder is not a typical either hybrid consume or greedy consume. Instead, it is kind of a consume with a lot of swarm elements. We see Germain there and Yennefer also in this deck. So an interesting deck we haven't seen played too much in this tournament yet.
Yeah, I really love this variant of Monsters from Freddy. Just seeing cards like Germain and Yen get played in a tournament is very cool. And like we mentioned with his crack, he's actually really running some sort of unique lineup choices. I mean, Life Coach did admit, you know, Freddy is the master of spice when it comes to this stuff, so we'll have to see, is it spicy enough?
Important to know as well, very key synergy here. The emissaries, for example, going onto your board do get buffed by Yennefer. There are extra bodies that do get added. So this is one of the ways that Freddy has decided to try and counter Nilfgaard, because emissaries, of course, are always played in Nilfgaard spies. They're one of the key units, and maybe this is one of the ways he counters that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's such a key point to hit up on. With Yennefer, it's all about token count, right? It's like, it doesn't really matter what the units on the board are, as long as I have a numerical advantage over you. Yen can easily swing in for 20+ points. So with those emissaries aiding Freddy and setting that up, it's so huge, especially when they get chained.
We see some key cards here for Freddy. The Woodland Spirit, round 1 going second is always fantastic to see as a player playing this Monsters deck. And Life Coach deciding not to bring the Guardian, for example, instead going for Iris in his Nilfgaard deck. And the Guardian is normally a play you like to make in early round 1 to get that, that effect going in round 2 and round 3. For those that don't know, it makes your opponent draw 2 bronze, 6 strength units in round 2 unless it's locked. Once it dies, which is absolutely devastating in terms of mulligans in round 2 for the Monsters player.
Yeah, it's really savage. It means that you're guaranteed to have a lesser Guardian in your hand, because of course you'll draw both, so you can't mulligan and blacklist it away. You will have a lesser Guardian in hand. But what do you think of the dry pass coming out here from Life Coach?
I think it's interesting. He has the Cantrella to really answer back if Freddy does play a spy to try and get card advantage back. And in round 2, I mean, Life Coach knows that he has a superior deck for a long round, and he has a very good deck for a short round as well with Joachim, so he has both bases covered. Many decks are kind of scared of certain matchups in long rounds or short rounds because they're maybe worse or not as good as other decks, but in this case, Nilfgaard is kind of the king of both of these long and short rounds, so I think he's not too worried about giving Freddy control of the game.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We're just going to see Nakamura come down from Freddy, establishing that carryover into round 2. 6 points, not bad to start the round with, indeed.
And Freddy does have the chance to really establish Consume and a lot of carryover for round 3. That's the one thing that Consume does very well. And of course, maybe creating a big tempo gap with that Woodland Spirit and with the Yennefer as well in round 2. Maybe making Life Coach play some of his key elements, like, for example, the Joachim in this round. But it's going to be hard to say. We're going to have to see if Life Coach can control some of Freddy's carryover.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting indeed, and you touched on the swarming there. Freddy can just storm the board so quickly. Germain itself representing 5 tokens, Woodland Spirit, 5 if there is a Fogler in, which of course there is, so that's 2 cards for 10 tokens. That immediately puts Yen at a great advantage, especially if you have emissaries raining down on your side of the board.
And we saw no mulligans there from Freddy. I think he's quite scared of potentially drawing into Harpies. He wasn't able to thin in round 1, and of course mulliganing in round 2 where you have a fairly decent hand isn't too bad, and I think he was happy with what he has. Although he has 2 Neckers, but it kind of plays around some lock abilities, or for example Peter that can reset. So I mean he has a bit of variance there with the Neckers. He can play 2 in 1 round.
Yeah, Freddy actually has basically all of his goals represented in his hand right now because Royal Decree would be pulling Yennefer. So he's got Woodland Spirit Renew and the Yennefer, which is really quite powerful. We're going to see the Spirit come down. I imagine this is to get those pesky Harpies out of the deck and eliminate the chance of drawing them later on.
Yeah, and the Fog and the Range Row indicates he knows all about Kalec, for example, and Vic of Aromatics, which are fixed to the Range Row. Not many, fixed units anymore, but there are still a few, and Vic of Aromatic and Kalec are some of those.
Yeah, definitely. Just, the foresight to set up that little bit of attrition damage, which is a nice touch. Of course, it's not the main reason he's playing Woodland, but it is a nice thing to make sure that you're doing. So Freddy is just going to basically overwhelm Life Coach at this point in this round and just try to get those cards out of him.
And although he does want carryover, he has the option to use the Dorgare into a Drowner, for example, to move a possible Enforcer into that range Ranger as well, so he has that guaranteed synergy with the weather, and he's going to be missing out on some Ekimara, obviously the carryover for the next round, but that extra bit of tempo and shutting down an Enforcer in the long round too could be vital to really, force Life Coach out of some of his best cards.
Yeah, clearing out those Enforcers is just essentially how this game is played. I'm surprised to not see that go down in the Fog Row. Many people choose to do that to avoid the possibility of it being drowned in, but this could just be Life Coach studying Freddy's deck very well and realizing that that's not an option for Freddy.
Although, yeah, Dorgray is really the only option. There aren't, extra drowners like an Aridin, so it's not that scary of a thing seeing that range row with the Fog, because there is maybe 1 or 2 options with Monster Nest as well. But actually, Freddy is not playing Monster Nest, so there's no chance for that, just that 1 Dorgray, and Life Coach isn't too worried about that right now, I think.
Yeah, he may be looking at the card count in Freddy's deck, 12 cards remaining. He may just think, maybe the Dorgray isn't there, but of course, there it is. Mankind is indeed a virus, and it's going to throw the Imperial Enforcer straight into that Fog, which is essentially going to immediately kill.
Yeah, a very solid tempo play, but also a very solid utility play. Looking into future turns in this round 2, just a lot of value saved by killing that Enforcer immediately.
Yeah, and already we see the board state massively in Freddy's favor. This is already 7 units on the board to the Life Coach's 0. So even if he was to play an Emissary to get a unit out, that's going to keep him at plus 7 units for Freddy, which is just making that yen better and better.
And not only is there a gap in points, but also in terms of unit numbers. I mean, we see so many units already on this, swarm deck that Freddy's brought. It's really what you want to do, and you have that yen number with Royal Decree, so you have the option at any moment when you see the big gap in terms of units to just get that yen number and create a huge tempo gap as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is going to be an interesting round. If you're Life Coach, how do you proceed into this round safely?
I mean, you have to start playing your engine units, your Enforcers, your Brigades, and really start getting that Spy synergy going, because if you don't, I mean, you have to start playing kind of your low tempo plays at the start to then start, snowballing into the higher tempo plays with the Emissaries and the Kalak and for example, the Emir as well, the leader ability. So, I mean, Life Coach has to be patient and just start trying to play some units on the board.
Yeah, he's definitely just got to get that engine set up, but thankfully for Life Coach, Freddy, he knows Freddy is not running, like you say, that Monster's Nest or just those Drowners, so he's safe putting it in the Siege Row for now, because Freddy is not going to have a means. There's no K-Run, so there's not really anything to kill it. Cleaver can lock one, but then the Emissaries are going to be sitting there, waiting to get more and more engine units out on board.
Yeah, I love this Cleaver. I mean, people always have, that one argument between Cleaver and Morkwood, for example, in Monsters, but Cleaver having the better body, at 9 strength, obviously much higher strength than Morkwood, makes it so I think it's more useful in more situations, although not as explosive against, for example, Protectors and Speletal, or these really high strength units that are boosted. But in this case, I think Cleaver is a great example here, locking that Enforcer, taking away so much value from Life Coach.
Yeah, Cleaver's a super interesting unit in Monsters, actually, because it sort of guarantees that your Necrorat will be okay, right? Necrorat is at least going to have a 9 strength, so it's minimum 14 if you play Cleaver. So that, compared with Toad Prince as well, which Freddy isn't running, just means that, Cleaver establishes a good bottom floor on your consume units.
Yeah, I mean, very big difference from these Unseen Under lists. Freddy is not running that Toad Prince and Manticore package with Monster Nest. Instead, running, like you said, new card. It was Catachan before, but now its name has changed. And also, for example, the Commander's Horn, which is a swarmy card that really helps when you have a lot of units, free 20 points, basically.
Yeah, when you have sort of cards like Jermaine, which can set up a Commander's Horn in 1 card, Commander's Horn just becomes an incredibly valuable tool for, like you say, nearly just a free 20 points.
And we still see such a big disparity between this unit count. I mean, Life Coach doesn't have these options to play a Jermaine for 5 units in 1 turn. It's just not there. And Freddy, every play he makes, I mean, 3 units from the Harpy, Jermaine for 5 is just massive.
Yeah, it's really, really getting scary for Life Coach right now, because this swarm, there's just not an answer to it. One Enforcer was immediately shot down, the other was locked by Cleaver, so he does not have a way of clearing these cheap tokens off the board. This could be problematic.
Please wait, Your Excellency.
And definitely have to see what the Abaya is going to be hitting as well, if it is going to be hitting for damage instead of the Weather Clear, which is probably the case in this matchup, which also means that maybe there's some kind of synergy between the Abaya and the Harpies coming out from the deck that might damage a low strength Enforcer that might come out later. So definitely keep that maybe synergy in mind to see if you can take down a 3rd Enforcer in that way.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be very interesting. This is Life Coach's point of view, so he's thinking long and hard about this. What do you think about this choice between them? Because one can't help but feel that he was potentially fishing for the other Enforcer.
Yeah, if you play a Brigade, I mean, it's going to get a lot of value over a long term, but the Nausicaa Brigade does take out 1 unit and help with that Vigavaro medic synergy as well. But I think the Impera Brigade is a better option for a long round. You really need that, high point Impera Brigade after a long round too to really help you out here.
Yeah, because it's super important to highlight that Life Coach has to win this round. Freddy got round 1, so despite the fact that, Freddy's playing like someone who desperately needs to keep ahead, it's actually not necessarily the case. He's doing it just to put immense pressure on Life Coach to spend that core of cards.
And we see Necker's still at 3 strength. This is a consume deck, but it's not the sole win condition. You have the Swarm win condition as well, or at least the way to win one round with Swarm, and then the second with carryover and consume. So Freddy playing a deck that's not as greedy or as all-in as other greedy consume decks, and instead just playing for 2 win conditions. And we see here the Harpies finally coming out of the deck, thinning his deck and doing a lot of damage and tempo.
Yeah, I must say, I actually really love this deck from Freddy. I think it's such a refreshing take on Consume. Of course, Swarm, it's not exactly brand new, but it's very cool to see in the tournament, especially cool to see it performing so well for Freddy. Now, the interesting thing is, what purpose are those eggs going to serve? Are they just tokens on the board? Are they just a little bit of carryover? Like, what is Freddy's game plan for these eggs?
It might just be carryover. He doesn't have any Ekimaras in hand. He does have some in his deck, but hasn't drawn into them just now. He used one in round 1 like we saw earlier, so that's the one option he does have. But right now, other than that, there's not much. And we see Vilgefort coming out so early from Life Coach because he is a bit scared now. And Joaquin.
Oh my goodness.
That is not what you want to see.
That is
so
a
early.
double win condition coming out for Life Coach there, and well, it's a lot of points, but it's not points when you want them. That is
then by stealth.
Technically, that's something that you want to see come out in round 3. For Vilgefort and Joaquin to come out, that's going to hurt Life Coach later on.
This is one of the reasons that many top players don't run Vilgeforts in their Nilfgaard decks, because the RNG factor that he can draw a win condition like Joachim in round 2 when you don't want it is so huge. And also with Iris as well, if you have it still in your deck, it makes it, it's controlled RNG. You can kind of control what you have in your deck and when you want to draw different things and maybe use it as a finisher as well. But in this case, it didn't help Life Coach too much. He bridged the point gap. He got some units on the board, but still he's wasting a big unit he wants to see in round 3, I think.
Yeah, especially when he already has sort of, auxiliary big units. There's still a brigade sitting there. He's still got an emissary. I'm sure that he is not happy to see that come out whatsoever.
And Freddy with a 6 strength Necker has to be very careful. Muzzle is in every single one of Life Coach's deck. He is the muzzle man. He loves the card. He thinks he gets a lot of value and utility as well. And I mean, he doesn't have it in hand now at the very least, so Freddy is safe for now, but he doesn't know this yet.
Yeah, definitely. I think the muzzle in every single deck is just so Life Coach. I mean, Life Coach is all about the efficiency, right? And it's hard to just argue against how many things muzzle can deal with. So kind of interesting to not see it come out yet, and especially with double Neckers in hand. It's still good, but it's not as devastating as it could be.
Yeah, we have seen, muzzle can be a dead card in round 3 sometimes when your opponent just doesn't have units in that, sweet spot. We saw, of course, in the first semifinal that the muzzle had to muzzle an emissary for a 4-point swing. Not fantastic, but in most cases going to get really good value. I mean, yesterday we also saw some 6-point and 2-point muzzles, so maybe I'm lying, but in the end, most of the time it's a pretty good card.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see Freddy Waves. So, maybe he's going ahead because he's got the double-handed tunnel vision on. Life Coach only going for the single hand, so a real tunnel vision meta evolving right in front of our eyes. But here we see a choice between Enforcers or Infiltrator. This is pretty late to get that Enforcer out.
Yeah, you missed a lot of emissaries already, and the Joachim as well, which could have added to that spy count. We do still see, Iris, Cantarella, and probably Vic of Automatic into a few more emissaries as well, so it's not too bad, but yeah, like you said, Enforcers early on is always the best option.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to want to keep playing those emissaries through the Vic of Medics and just take down that Necker, to really just grind them out of the deck. We've seen that to great effect in the past, so this is getting to be a pretty hairy situation for both players, actually. Both of them kind of getting down to very, very cool cards, but the fact of the matter is that Jermaine and Yennefer is still sitting there, and it is looking huge.
We'll have to see if Freddy wants to maybe save a Yennefer Jermaine combo for round 3, but I think in most scenarios he wants to play it out in this round, although playing against, Impair Brigades and an Enforcer already on the board, which kind of gets you free tempo with your Spy Synergy, is always, tough in a round, but he goes for Yennefer right now.
Yeah, here we go. This is going to be a plus. What is this going to be, a plus 10 unit advantage?
A plus a lot of numbers is a big
so there's
boomba.
Yeah, there is 16 eligible targets for the Unicorn and only 6 on Life Coach's side, so that is an astronomically effective Yennefer, and like you say, a mighty Boomba indeed, so really great Yen from Freddy Waves.
And only one Enforcer makes it so that Iris can go off immediately if you play Iris right now, so having killed those Enforcers, not just the value that you won, not letting those Enforcers ping your units every time an Emissary is played, but also, not allowing that Iris to go off immediately is absolutely huge in terms of tempo.
Yeah, definitely. And that Fog finally getting to a little tickle of attrition damage on that Vic of Medic, because as you mentioned, those are roadlocked. So, hey, 1 point can be very important. Nice Nausicaa here, though, killing a 7 strength target. That's what you want to see it doing. And now he has the Enforcers to take some more shots with.
and the Nausicaa Brigade hitting the Joachim that was at 7 because of the Yennefer. So Yennefer, you know, not the worst for Life Coach. It helped him out just a tiny bit. But in the end here, we're going to see a tie, and this might be Freddy's time to pass.
Yeah, that's a really, really great pass for Freddy, going down onto equal cards. Life Coach, head in hands, looks very frustrated with that pass because he's got to go down to equal, but he's winning this round, meaning that Freddy gets the final play of next round.
Not only that, but Freddy also has carryover, and you know, a fairly decent hand, I think. Germain, renew on Yennefer again in that, you know, right away in round 3 maybe after that Germain is played. So he has a decent hand. Of course, we also see an Iris and Life Coach's hand, a card that, you know, can swing for a lot of tempo if you can have the right synergy. So it's gonna be tough to call this one.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredibly close round 3 because we just see such powerful cards. You know, there's Iris, Menno, still Vic of Iris for emissaries, which can pull infiltrators, which can enable Mennos. So this is going to be a very, very close round indeed. It'll be interesting to see. Freddy's got to be looking for those Ekamaras, right?
I mean, Ekimaras are going to help with bringing out the third Necker, for example, so that's pretty good. Life Coach here decides to play that controller, gets him, you know, get rid of it right now in his hand and not have to mulligan it next turn, clearing up his hand just a tiny bit, and draws into Rain Farm, which is a card that doesn't have that Joachim to be played in round 3, so it's not ideal.
No, it's just going to have the Iris to play if it's mulligan, because of course we've seen Cantarella, we've seen Joachim. That's going to be a really, really rough Rain Farm, and not presenting Life Coach with many great mulligan opportunities, so it'll be interesting to see what he spends to take this round.
Maybe the Imperial Brigade. I mean, it's not going to be fantastic in round 3. There's not that many spy units left in Life Coach's deck. We are still missing Kalek, for example. It can generate a few emissaries, but if it is balanced, of course. But other than that, the Imperial Brigade, I think, won't get too big, and maybe the Vikavara medics are more valuable.
Yeah, I think that you're right there, especially when you want to get those infiltrators out to set off the biggest Menno possible. But I've got to say, I do quite like Freddy Babe's position here, but it's too early to call. Both players, pretty strong hands.
Not only that, you can also maybe, as Life Coach, adapt to the situation and maybe res a Harpy, for example, to get more units on the board against that Yennefer. So it's hard to call in terms of the numbers, but there's always different ways to play different matchups that might end up winning the game if you play it a bit differently than normal. So we're going to see if that ends up happening. And we do see some Harpies coming out here, which is interesting, but yeah, that's what we're going to see. A little bit carryover isn't too bad, and he does stay ahead here.
Yeah, just trying to, you know, set up his own couple of points carryover. Of course, it's not going to compare to the Necker and the double Harpy's eggs, but yeah, it's a little bit, it'll help keep you up, and especially when this round can be so close, those 2 points can be vital.
Well, the Neckers, I mean, you have the Necker carryover, but it isn't too big. This isn't, you know, a greedy consume deck that has 16 or 17 point Neckers. It's just going to be, I think, about 6 or 7 strength, so it's a decent bonus, but not game winning.
Yeah, absolutely not. But the interesting card for me here is the Iris. Now, how do you kill the Iris if you're Life Coach?
You have the Nausicaa Brigades, for example. I think only 1 was played, if I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
And he is playing 2 in this deck because normally when you run Iris, you want to have the guarantee that you can kill it in round 3, even if you spend one of those Nausicas. And he isn't playing a Sire, so he can't shuffle 1 back. So you definitely want to have at least 2 Nausicas to have the guarantee with Nausicas and Menno as well. Some decks are now running only 1 Nausicaa. In this case, Life Coach with Iris, with the Iris variant of Nilfgaard Spies, running 2 of them.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see. That's probably going to hurt because of the Joachim out of Vilgefortz earlier really just limits the chance to get those out, which can be so rough. So really, really painful Vilgefortz there earlier for Life Coach.
And we see a Harpy which will probably get mulligan, although the Necker will have to get mulligan actually to get that synergy with an Ekimara if it is drawn. Harpy not a great card in round 3, and 2 Harpies is even worse. I mean, just 7 points. They get you bodies for Yennefer. That is fantastic. But other than that, without anything to consume those eggs, it loses some of the value there as well.
Yeah, there's no Commander's Horn sitting in the hand of Freddy Babe, so he's going to be very sad at that. But like you say, they count as, you know, they're 7 points and 3 bodies for Yen, which is okay, but against a shorter round Nilfgaard, it's not what you want in hand.
And we'll have to see the muzzle in Life Coach's hand. We see a 6 strength Necker. We could see something very interesting happen there, stealing that, you know, that Necker chance. But of course, you don't really see a consume effect either in Freddy Babe's hand. So maybe a bit of a bamboozle there from Freddy saying, "You can take my Necker. I don't want him anymore. He's useless to me."
Yeah, absolutely. You could see some value shedded off that muzzle. It looks like that's what we're going to see. The muzzle jumping onto that Necker and getting it over to Life Coach's side of the board. But like you mentioned, there's no consume, so actually that is not as efficient as Life Coach thinks it's going to be. But still the right play regardless.
And I mean, he did take 1 unit for, you know, to lessen that Yennefer and increase his own. Yennefer, he has the extra body, so it isn't the worst play in the world, and it's definitely the correct play because obviously Life Coach does not, he knows Freddy's deck, but not his hand. He's not a mind reader just yet. So of course, I think that was definitely the correct play. And Freddy now just, you know, the Harpies aren't great to see in your hand. No Commander's Horn. Some of these explosive plays he wanted to see in round 3 to finish this game out, he doesn't have them.
Yeah, absolutely. He just wants that Commander's Horn. With Germain with no Commanders is very, very sad indeed. He's just going to want to pump the board full of bodies slam that yen down and hope that he can just get high value out of it. But, you know, with cards such as Vanamar potentially playing an Overdose, he can shred those tokens off the board.
Yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, if you hit the eggs, for example, you're going to be hitting eggs that later, you know, create another 1 strength unit, so it's pretty much not doing anything at all. And it also gets rid of some of that overdose damage because it's only 1 strength as well, so not too bad for Freddy. He has to play those Harpies as soon as possible, maybe playing around that. I mean, Freddy knows Lifecoach's deck list. He knows his deck is, you know, quite thin, only 4 cards left, and Vanamar is definitely a card that he can play, so maybe he's Freddy anticipating this and playing those Harpies before Germain, for example, or even, you know, Abaya.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an interesting round for Freddy. Be cunning to see when his Abaya timing is. Do you think he just goes for Arrakis for value?
Yeah, I think he definitely tries to get that damage. Maybe Lifecoach doesn't play around it. It's hard to call. But we do see that, you know, quite a bit of spacing here with these units. So maybe Lifecoach knows this. He can, you know, weather, but weather in a short round, especially rain, is always tricky to get a lot of value from. So maybe Freddy will be kind of patient and wait for more units to flood the board.
Yeah, I think that might be the case here, because Freddy's getting to the point where he just has to start spamming units. Now, we're going to see the other Harpy come out potentially, or Germain, just to establish tokens. That's what Freddy's deck is all about. Get those tokens out and play that Yennefer and hope the explosion is big enough to carry you to a victory.
And these players know each other's deck list, and it makes it for a very interesting dynamic where you don't have to play around sorting cards like Lacerate, like Igni, like, you know, just sorting cards that you would play around in ladder, for example. You don't have to play around in tournaments, and you can also kind of trick your opponents to thinking you have things that you really don't. For example, Freddy might be hinting at a Commander's Horn, which he doesn't have in hand, and this might make Lifecoach play in a different, less efficient manner as well. So it's always interesting to see the dynamic between what each player has in their deck and what they expect from each player, especially in such a, you know, nail-biting finish here.
Yeah, this is going to be extremely close. I mean, it's going to be interesting because presumably he wants to get out something from this Emissary here, but he's going to need it to potentially kill the Iris, although he could just ping 4 damage onto Iris. I mean, obviously it dies anyway, just disloyal from Menno, so we may see Menno just plays an 11 point to trigger Iris, which makes this choice from the Emissary very interesting indeed.
And there's the Nazgul that could have killed the Iris, but in this case, Iris has not been played yet, so not a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Instead, he's going to be probably forced to take... Oh, he's actually going to go for the Nazgul Brigade. Okay, he's going to remove another token, because of course that hurts Yennefer's future potential value, so all in all, pretty nice play.
Yeah, it's still a 12 strength tempo play. It's not bad at all for a bronze. I think it's pretty standard. And I mean, it's better than Harpies in terms of pure value, but Harpies have that extra utility with the extra bodies and possibly playing around that overdose as well if the overdose does hit the egg. So I think both players have some fairly, you know, average bronzes here, nothing too crazy. And Lifecoach, I think he's really missing his Drakeem, for example, as a finisher.
Yeah, definitely. That Vogelflutz and the Drakeem may end up being the critical point of this match, but one of the interesting things that we do see is we see, well, we can't see it right now because we're looking at Lifecoach's hand, but we see the Abaya slowly starting to get a decent amount of value. It's already 11 if it does Arrakis Venom, that front row, so I imagine Freddy sees another unit go down there. He's going to be
Freddy's a patient man. He knows he has to wait for his chance to get that full value, trying to maximize, you know, the points obviously on his board, and he knows that Germain, whenever he plays it, as long as it's before Yennefer, of course, doesn't really matter, so he's going to get those cards out first.
Yeah, and here we see Lifecoach, both players looking like they're intensely concentrating on what to do next, as this match is merely separated by 2 points. Incredibly close right now. Freddy Babe's Spicy Swarm going up against Lifecoach's pretty standard Iris variant of Nilfgaard Spies, so really just nail-biting match right now.
It's funny right now the sequence, I think, in this next play from Freddy. If he plays Abaya first, he might just hit the range draw, because if he's planning on playing Yennefer, he's getting rid of 3 units that would go up to 3 points, which is 9 points total, whereas it's only 8 points in the front row. So that's something to take into, you know, consideration, especially considering that the Katakan, obviously, it's a target for Menno if there's an Infiltrator in hand, so it's tricky as well.
Yeah, this is going to be really, really interesting indeed. It does remove those Iris targets beautifully. If he kills this, it would shed 5 points off of Iris's value, and mean that Iris would only be doing 20, as Menno would bring the body count up to 4 if the Vanamar isn't played beforehand. So this is some really tense stuff from both players. The Yennefer's looking huge. The Iris is, you know, well, Iris is going to do what Iris does. But then there's a little bit of value from the Nekarat and a bit of value from Abaya. I must say, I'm actually liking Freddy's position right now.
Freddy has seen 2 Nazgul Brigades as well, so he knows that the only thing that kills the Iris now is that Menno. And even if he uses Yennefer now to buff the Iris to 5 points, it won't matter at all. So maybe he waits to wait for an overdose, maybe from Vanamar, and I guess not. He'll shut me up, and Yennefer will be played immediately.
Once again, casters debated. Here comes Yennefer. Large unit advantage for Freddy, opening up the gap to 28 points. So even a Menno onto that Iris will barely take it. And then with Nekarat and Abaya, bear in mind that the Yennefer actually has added enough value onto that mid row to make Abaya significantly better too. So really interesting play there. And actually, the Yennefer adding value to Life Coach's units is even nullified, despite the huge token advantage for Freddy.
Yeah, and there will be, I think, 5 units total no matter what, with the Menno being played, even if those 3 units in the range row are killed. So I think Life Coach can play either Vanimar or Menno first. It wouldn't matter in terms of points. But he goes for Menno first, and we're going to be seeing a huge Boomba and a huge swing here from this Iris.
Alright, so there we go. 2 of them go on the range row, making Freddy able to deliver 11 points of damage, which makes Abaya a 14. Then he's got Nekarat, which is going to be eating... what's the strongest unit for Nekarat to eat right now? Is it Cleaver?
I think it is a 9. It is going to be Cleaver.
Cleaver, right?
And we're going to be seeing both 15-point plays from both players, and Freddy already with a bit of a lead, so Freddy will be taking this one. Obviously, Vanimar is worth 15 points, and the Arrakis is going to be worth... Not 15. Well,
no, it's going to be 14. It's going to be 14.
But it still will be enough to win the game.
So that is enough for Freddy to take the first round with the Spicy Swarm deck. Got to say, big fan of that deck from Freddy. Some really creative monster play in this tournament so far by the British player. And Life Coach losing on his Emir Spice deck. Very interesting result. What do you make of that?
I mean, I think the most important moment really is that Joachim draw in round 2, which maybe Life Coach didn't need. And we saw in the end there he played Vikavar Medic with a heartbeat to win the round.
Yeah.
So a lot of plays would have done it regardless, and he didn't need that extra tempo. Whereas Freddy, not drawing cards like Commander's Horn in round 3, for example, might have hurt him, but in the end, he pulls ahead by just a little bit with Yennefer. You know, massive in this game for him.
Yeah, I think one of the critical moments was really that Vilgefortz pulling Joaquin, because that is simply just something Life Coach wants to see round 3. It's like, yeah, okay, you caught up in round 2, fantastic, but your round 3 arsenal is now severely diminished. So I think that Vilgefortz was really unfortunate for Life Coach there.
If you catch up in 1 card, it's great. But because Freddy had Yennefer to create that gap again, he had to go 2 cards in again. So you can't, I mean, if you play 2 cards, there can be 2 average value cards and you're still going to win. If you play 1 very good card and you catch up, then it's worth it, because being 1 card up in round 3 is definitely worth it, even if you waste your win condition. In the case, that we saw here, he played a win condition and still he couldn't catch up in just 1 card. He had to use 2 cards because Yennefer was a huge swing with so many bodies on Freddy's board. So in the end, Freddy with the perfect, I think, timing in round 2, he got that pass, right on the tie, for example, and I think that was just massive for Freddy as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting to see Freddy's Nilfgaard targeting, because Nilfgaard targeting, that is just crazy to even say, right? I mean, that's so rare to see in the tournament these days. Normally, Nilfgaard just absolutely eliminated from being able to be played, but honestly, it was so cool to see Freddy's monsters just target down that Nilfgaard deck.
And now we're going to see Freddy starting first, so a bit of a disadvantage for him, and Life Coach starting second. We're not sure what decks we're going to see just yet. It's a surprise still for us, but I'm very excited for this next game. Life Coach, I think he knows he has to win this to not go into that position of having to do a reverse sweep in the semifinals. It's such a big tournament. It's always very stressful, I think.
Well, yeah, and also it's having to start a reverse sweep when the next game Freddy will be going second, which is a pretty big advantage, so it's the worst position to be reverse sweeping from. So Life Coach is going to be going into ultra focus mode, implying that he's not always in ultra focus mode, but that's going to be a fascinating next match. I really wonder what decks these players go to.
Freddy has a chance to play his Radovid deck, which is, I think, fairly good against all of Life Coach's deck. All of them have, things you want to lock, I guess. And we do see Radovid from Freddy here. Actually, yeah, we do see Radovid from Freddy. And we see King Brand from Life Coach, a deck that, has a lot of carryover, has a lot of great, conditions to win this game, not just in terms of finishers, but also with a carryover element. And we're going to see, what ends up happening here.
Yeah, really cool to see Radovid getting played too. Very excited for this matchup. Radovid has a couple of excellent targets against Skellige. Of course, Olgierd, Ceres, you can remove so much utility from the game when you do lock those two. It is really a powerful asset to have. So big fan of Radovid in this matchup.
The one problem is that Ceres and Olgierd do not come out in round 1, most of the time anyway. So Radovid will have to wait until round 2 to, really get his thing going. But Radovid sometimes in round 2 is almost unnecessary tempo or plays you don't want to make, so it's tricky to get the full value when you don't have that control in round 2. So we're going to have to see if Freddy Babies can find that perfect moment to lock those units and get rid of one of the bigger win conditions in this King Brand deck.
Yeah, certainly. His hand's looking pretty good, though. He's got double Blue Stripe Scouts and the Reaver there for all 3 to come out. And then, he's got Ronvid too to establish the carryover. And this is looking pretty nice. Plenty of crewman opportunities for those ballistas. Yeah, it's looking good.
It's looking good, but he's missing, that gold color. He wants to keep some gold in his hand. Although, most of the golds in this Northern Realms deck are safe for round 3. The Dijkstra, for example, or even the Blue Dream that can play that Dijkstra again. So, and of course, Blue Dream finds a great target in Muzzle. Why run Muzzle when you can steal your opponents? I mean, it's a great idea there from Freddy, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely love Blue Dream's inclusion, which is growing and growing because, of course, the more cards like Muzzle are played, the better Blue Dream becomes, because not only if you don't want to counter with the Muzzle, you have additional choices. So Blue Dream really, really just moving up and up in the ranks, in my opinion, which is super cool to see the meta shifting sort of this late into a patch. Really healthy indication for the game. So I like this Scout out because this is such a tempting Muzzle target. We've seen so often, it looks like he's just going to go for more. But it's so funny when the Muzzle debate happens onto the Blue Stripe Scout.
We saw in the match between Petrify and Game King at the last Gwent Slam number 3, but in this case, Lifecoach decides not to take that Muzzle. He wants a higher value Muzzle in terms of pure strength and value, and he decides to just open up with King Bran, Sarius, Olgierd, and Wolfsbane, a very standard play. Wolfsbane, of course, after 3 turns, will do 12 points of damage. Well, it will heal your units for 6 points and damage your opponent, his highest unit for 6 points as well.
Yeah, definitely. Wolfsbane, a very, very interesting card. Kind of been making a little bit of a resurgence recently. Wolfsbane kind of fell off a little bit, but it's back in force this challenger. What do you make of that?
It's interesting. It's a card that some of the highest, pro players don't really value as much because it's kind of a waste of a gold slot. It's great tempo in round 1, but some people think it's not, as valuable or as impactful as other golds like Lugos, for example, that Lifecoach is not running in this deck. So it's a tough decision, really. It kind of caters towards each player's playstyle.
Yeah, it's interesting the only really big target removal Lifecoach is running is that Coral, which could potentially come back to haunt him, but thankfully for him, not particularly against Northern Realms. Typically you want that good target removal against something like monsters, but here he could do okay with the Wolfsbane.
And a pass here from Lifecoach, saving that Wolfsbane damage for the next round, and creating a point where he has a card up, he has carryover, and Freddy is in a difficult position here, I think.
Yeah, this is really going to be rough for Freddy from here on out, but he does have a very powerful hand ignoring that. Ronvid, Shani, these are all really high value cards, and the Temerians available to him. I don't think Freddy's in too rough of a spot yet.
I mean, Lifecoach, I think he had a very good idea in bringing this deck as a red coin deck, his King Bran, because it's very interesting to establish carryover. Play Wolfsbane, which is also carryover in some way, although not with a direct body, but still in terms of points and value. And then passing and letting your opponent win that first round, but having a dominant position in round 2 and summoning circle into a potential spy from your opponent does just that. It really enables Lifecoach to guarantee card advantage going into round 3, although it doesn't have last say, of course.
Yeah, we're seeing so much this summoning circle attempts from Lifecoach. What do you think of the performance of this card so far in the tournament form? Because we've yet to see it make a true impact.
I think he really brought it for just the reason I just explained. In a normal setting, in a normal, maybe ladder where you don't have control of outcomes and situations as much as a tournament setting, it's a card that gets, volatile value. It's not guaranteed, to be a great card in every single matchup. But in this case, Lifecoach knows what he's doing with this deck. He knows the position he's going to be in pretty much every situation, every matchup with this deck, because he is starting second. He knows this as well, so he can really put this summoning circle to really good use. Yeah, the Ronvid summoning circle is very, very tempting for Lifecoach if that card were to come out, because of course it is another tick on the Sarius res timer, so it's like an additional Olgierd sitting there for you, which is really fantastic. I'm wondering, you raised such a good point earlier, I'm wondering when we get to see the Radovid really find its value. I mean, in this long round 2, it might just, find Sarius, and Olgierd is already on the board, so I think it's going to be pretty easy for Freddy to find value there. But also, very important, speaking about Romvid has a crewman tag, and he has the synergy with the machines, the harpooners, in Lifecoach's deck as well, so it's a really interesting little subtle thing. You don't see because Romvid is not in Scalia, but in this case, the harpooners are machines, they do get that crewman synergy. Yeah, absolutely. The crewman is a really interesting tag. Slowly, potentially because of cards like Muzzle, Summoning Circle, seeing it get used in other factions, which is really, really interesting indeed. But speaking of crewmen, if Freddy sets up a double crewman pocket, those battering rams could do some serious damage. They definitely can, but I mean, siege towers as well. Normally you don't want them too high, I think, in this matchup because you are scared of Coral and giving it, a few extra points of value. But Lifecoach, I mean, he's a card up, he has a lead, he has carryover, he has a Wolfsbane. I mean, he has a lot of things going for him right now. Yeah, the Wolfsbane is going to be pretty important in this matchup because it just means Freddy simply can't play into it too much without going to pure burn mode, right? He's just got to go to like, okay, I'm obviously not going to make any serious push this round, I'm just going to burn cards out of you. It looks like Freddy might be going for a pass. He is accepting. He doesn't have a spy. He's not going to catch up in terms of points. He lets his Wolfsbane tick and, gets rid of that damage. And he goes into a round 3, a card down, and he says, I'm a card down, but I have control the situation. I'm going to let you do your thing, and I'm going to have, all my plays in one round. The crewman synergy, the battering rams, the infantryman. And I think he wants to really draw Dijkstra here, but if he doesn't, he might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting draw. He's going to mulligan this Temerian infantry away because, of course, I believe even the marching orders would actually play Temerian infantry right now, but he doesn't get that Dijkstra, which is really going to hurt him.
We see, Freddy's hand not ideal, but Life Coach, he has Ulrich and he has a Raider in hand. Do you want to see that? I think not at all in round 3.
Yeah, a couple of frustrating round 3 draws coming out for both these players, but the difference is Freddy just, sort of pulled a lower tempo unit, whereas Life Coach pulled units you simply don't want right now. Like, that Raider is basically representing almost, not in terms of final action, but almost representing -1 cards because of its low tempo.
But of course, Life Coach does have Last Say, and with that Ulrich, you'll have not just Last Say, but double Last Say, so very valuable there for Life Coach. But like you said, Raider 4 points and the Olgerd 2 points of carryover. As long as his cards are worth, 6 points less than Freddy's, it's going to be kind of equal, even though he has the extra card.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting round as it winds out. Looks like Freddy is struggling to come up with an opening solution here. What do you go for at the open here?
If you play Ronvid, first we're going to see Life Coach play the Raider, I think, immediately just to get rid of that card and not have to commit to any kind of play in the beginning. Just saying, I have this Raider, I can't mulligan it, I don't have a Vest and Skill just yet. I'm going to get rid of this now and just say not commit anything just yet.
Yeah, I think that Freddy is really going to struggle to find an open play here, though. He could potentially just roll out with the Ronvid early on, because of course it would need to be damaged a little bit before it was able to be muzzled, so he could go for establishing the crewman, but really there's nothing that screams opening play in Freddy's hand.
I think it'll definitely have to be Ronvid. You don't really have another option. You are scared of Coral, of course, but if he has Coral, you can't do anything about it. As soon as Ronvid is played, it'll probably go into that Ronvid to take away that utility, that the crewman synergy and the crewman tag that he has, and not the greatest value, but still, in terms of utility, it's definitely valuable.
Yeah, here we go. Here comes out the Ronvid, defending Maid Bilberry's honor in just a moment. Oh, no, range throw apparently.
Blood alone can my maid's honor
the thing about the
besmirch.
Harpooners, and it's really important, the positioning. After the positioning patch, it was very important, but in this case, now everything's agile, so it's not as important, but still, with last rates, with Ignis, with Harpooners, it matters quite a bit, and Freddy definitely taking his time to get the right little slot for Ron to fall on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting strategy coming out from Freddy. He's going to be relying so much on machine attrition damage, but when that Armor Smith is sitting there, so much that could get repaired, he's got to be really careful with those reinforced ballistas and the second hits from the battering ram.
And the one scary thing is that for this crewman to work, you have to stack your units next to the crewman. If you stack your units in one row, Harpooners don't get value. There's one card that Life Coach brought to this tournament to counter just that, and he brought this last right here that really punishes these crewman decks that have to stack in one row to get that full value.
Yeah, it's a really, really scary counter, of course. Row stacking is so important in today's meta that I really love the Lacerate tech, and I think we're going to see him just discard the Raider here.
That's it! Good!
So the Lacerate's not out though. The Alderic can pull it, but it's going to be touch and go.
And we mentioned the Radovid at the start of the game, that how it would find value in round 2, but depending on the situation, it might not. And we definitely didn't see it find value. There wasn't really a time for Freddy to play that Radovid, and Saris didn't come out either, so it was tricky for him. And now it's useless. There's really nothing to lock. Saris already came out. She's not going to come out again. And Olgerd, he's obviously not going to come out again either. So Radovid, a decent 14-point tempo play as a leader, but not ideal at all.
Yeah, really failing to find that early value against, the typical lock targets of Olgierd and Saris. As you touched on, it's just failed to find this moment in this game. I think the Wolfsbane was actually a really important pressure against it, because it means Freddy just couldn't safely play into a long round 2. I think that really made his Radovid struggle.
Now, is it the idea to play Death Mold Rain, for example, at the very start of this round? You can expect a Grimace, for example, from your opponent, but it would end up being a trade of mages and not much else would go down. If he doesn't have a Grimace, Armor Smith is great, but because of the RNG factor from the rain, it doesn't really hit a guaranteed unit at the highest or the lowest, just the 2 random units on the row. It could end up being valuable in a very long round 3.
Yeah, it certainly could be. It does open up potential for the Armor Smith, but when you're looking at a front row with relatively low strength units on, it really caps that Armor Smith's potential, but Saris is already a big heal, so he's got to be very careful with that rain, because I feel it just may enable a pretty killer Armor Smith.
But of course, Alzur's Thunder, not the greatest bronze spell. You have to kind of say, if you had, Arrakis Venom, you had Overdose, you'll say, yeah, I can save these for later, get some decent, 15-point mage, it's fine. But a 10-point mage, it's a little bit worse.
Yeah, Death Mold's spell of choice is not a particularly fantastic one these days, as the game's generally moved away from 7 being the golden kill point a little bit. Still okay against decks such as Nilfgaard, but as we see here, it's not going to find too much against Brand, but there is the Armor Smith.
The early Armor Smith, Life Coach not committing. He knows that maybe he doesn't, I think, prepare for rain at all, and is there a chance now to think about it? There is still armor on that front row, so not ideal, but with one Armor Smith gone, there might be a chance. Of course, Life Coach only playing one Armor Smith, not playing two like Game King yesterday, so is there an option for that Death Hole to come out right now if Freddy notices?
I think we certainly could see it. I mean, the Rain is potentially going to hit a pretty decent value this round if it does come out, you know. You can put it in that range row, it blocks off other Warmongers, or you can just have it chip away at the armor in the melee, but I think the range row would probably be the right call for the Rain here.
Although you might, of course, see a Summoning Circle into Death Hole and then to clear that Rain as well, so, and of course, it's tough to say if that's worth it or not, but, and also Udorik can draw into cards that we might be seeing, like the Last Ray or like the Grimace as well, that we've been talking about in this matchup.
Yeah, it looks like the battering ram's going to start to find their value, chipping away at Life Coach's units. That's one of the really sort of hallmarks of machines. Just each one of these machines, when synergized with the crewman, finding such fantastic value. But one of the cards I find really interesting here is the Reinforcement. What do you think is the remaining target for Freddy here?
I mean, he has Infantryman, he can draw that, and that's
I believe the Marching Orders would be his Infantryman.
He can draw it with the Reinforcement first, and then Marching Order, the order would change there. But either way, I think he's definitely going to get his Infantryman. That's a guarantee from both of us, and that's a huge point. I mean, 21 points, I believe, is well, 20. No, it's 18 points because it's not full. I said Radovid.
It's 18 points. Yeah.
18 points, still pretty massive for a bronze card, and of course, thinning your deck. When you have Dijkstra, it's great. You can thin your deck for better cards, but in this case, no Dijkstra, no party.
Yeah, no Dijkstra, no party may end up being remarkably apt. We see Summoning Circle burn onto a fairly plain battering ram. Interesting choice coming out here, and really opens up that Rain play you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, now there's one less counter to that. Of course, Udorik can still draw the Grimace, for example, from Life Coach's deck, but is it too late? I mean, you're already losing. You have two pretty good options in the back row there, but of course, if the Armor Smith dies, then you kind of enable the Freyazik to res it again and heal, so it's tough to call. I think Rain is always tricky if you want to play it or not, because it's such low tempo at the very start if it's cleared, for example, but if it isn't cleared and can go in a long round, it can get a lot of value.
Yeah, one of the things is Freddy now knows Ronvid is not long for his board either, because it is at the magical 8 number, meaning he will probably fall victim to a muzzle soon, I think it's safe to say.
And Freddy has nothing to deal with that. He knows that that's the last crewman tag he's going to get. You know, the Siege Tower very happy at 12 strength, you know, quite buffed up, but I think that's the last one we're going to see there. Muzzle going to probably drop in quite quickly here.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. It's just Radovid remaining really for Freddy here, so we're going to see the muzzle, I would imagine, unless Life Coach is prioritizing something else. It would seem to be the logical play following dinking that Ronvid down. So it's going to be interesting. Freddy does have some serious tempo remaining, though, with those Temerians.
But Freddy cannot play around both Harpooners and Last Ray. If Life Coach is able to find that Last Ray with the Udorik, and considering that I think we're going to be seeing a lot of row stacking in that range row, it might be the draw that might win in the game. Although, of course, playing a Spy in round 3, unless you're Nilfgaard, isn't normally ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. That Ulderic really needs to find its value. It needs that Lacerate, to be honest, to really see it do its work. But here it goes. There goes Ronvid over to defend Maid Bilberry on the other side of the board, because, of course, he does like to travel around a little bit. So that muzzle finding 16 points of value and denying a crewman tag.
I think Freddy is really missing his blue dream here. It would have gotten him muzzle right back from Life Coach's grave, copied it, and stolen that Ronvid right back. So unfortunately for him, he doesn't quite have the cards he wants to have in this round 3. He's missing some of the key cards that he wanted in this matchup. But still, I think he has, you know, a fairly decent hand, I guess. Decent bronze value, although without that crewman synergy, he lost a little bit.
Yeah, I think that Freddy's really regretting not drawing more golds out, because to merely have Shani when you've got Natalis, Dijkstra, and Blue Dream sitting in the deck is definitely going to hurt, because I would say pound for pound, Skellige's bronzes are probably going to be a little bit stronger than Northern Realms, so you are going to want to see those gold cards. Northern Realms shines, but it can chain up that, you know, Natalis into the Reinforcement, all the Commander's Horn, all the Dijkstra for the huge tempo burst. It is quite a gold-centric deck, whereas Skellige does great just with its bronzes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, the fact you're missing also a Horn, for example, a silver that normally generates 20 points, which is, you know, most of the time much higher than average. We saw before, I mean, Abaya with 15 points and Vanimar as well with 15 points, which is kind of the standard for silvers, but 20 points silver in Commander's Horn, it's a lot riskier because you are buffing units and that has a lot of counters like Coral, but in general, it's a card you want to see in round 3 as well. Maybe even pulled from Dijkstra. I mean, Dijkstra pulling into a Blue Dream and then Commander's Horn, or John Natalis Commander's Horn, is, you know, almost guarantees you win the game. But in this case, Freddy missing all of this. He sees a few bronzes, a few machines that, you know, he likes to see, but they're not his favorites, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really going to see what's come down potentially to what we see coming out of that Ulderic. Got to get that Lacerate, and this is why the Warmongers are coming down you know, discarding more and more cards, increasing the chance of drawing out that Lacerate from the Ulderic, which would already, if the Ulderic was placed in the range row, you know, equal its value and obviously give the card advantage. So really important for Life Coach that he manages to fish out that Lacerate.
Yeah, unfortunately the king of YOLO is not Yavin. Yavin does guarantee that spell drop, but Life Coach, unfortunately, there is, you know, his spy discards a card, has a different synergy between the Skellige archetype with discard, but unfortunately for him, I think he would have loved to have Yavin in hand that guarantees that Lacerate drop, but he doesn't have it this time. He has Ulderic, which isn't great.
Yeah, it certainly isn't fantastic, but it could end up finding a great deal of value. These Harpooners still struggling to find their mark, but it could almost be an awkward thing if the Harpooners actually counterplaying the Lacerate, because it's almost one or the other, right?
Exactly. I mean, we see a fixed unit in Deathblow that has to be placed in that siege row, but everything else is going to be spammed into the range row. And here, a clear cut example that there is no Igni in Life Coach's deck, and Freddy knows this. He plays 2 12-strength units in the range row and says, you don't have Igni, I'm not scared of you, I'm just going to stack this row and not worry about a single thing.
Yeah, he's certainly not concerned about Igni, having studied Life Coach's deck, which is one of the real sort of tournament advantages in how you edit your playstyle, because, of course, if you didn't know what your opponent's deck would contain, that would be what we call a slightly risky play.
Yeah, day one it's a lot trickier because the players don't know each other's deck list. They don't know exactly what each player will be playing and what kind of. I mean, they have a general idea from, you know, decks in Pro Ladder and how the better decks can be run. You know what cards are being run to those decks. But in this day too, they know exactly what's being run and they know exactly what to play around. And I think it adds an extra layer of skill, even maybe not so much in improvisation, but you know, in planning and knowing how to play different cards. And Ulderic not drawing Lacerate.
Yeah, not finding Lacerate whatsoever. It is placed in the siege row, so those Whale Harpooners will be pretty efficient on it, you know, dealing 5 points of damage. But triple Whale Harpooner and nothing to particularly throw around is going to be troublesome.
Yeah, we saw the rope there from Life Coach, famous for, you know, really taking his time to think maybe a bit too much there. I think that might have been an RNG draw from Life Coach. He didn't really click on that last unit. I might be wrong though, but it was definitely a last-second click. And like you said, 3 Harpooners, they're going to move that Ulderic, but that's really it. I mean, you can move a unit off the range row and then back into it again with 2 Harpooners, but you're missing out on some value there.
Yeah, you certainly are. You'd only be hitting for 3 if you did it before you pull the Ulderic as well. So interesting draws for Life Coach, not what he wanted to see whatsoever. And we may see just the value points per card of Freddy kind of pull ahead a little bit here.
And we see Freddy definitely knowing not to kill that Armorsmith. He knows that he's going to be doing a lot of damage with some of his machines, like this Reinforced Ballista, like we saw with the Battering Ram before. And he knows that there's only one Armorsmith in Life Coach's deck. Again, going on to the deck list part of this matchup, he knows there's only one of those, not 2 like Game King's list, and he knows to really not worry about damage because there's nothing else to heal, really.
Yeah, it's certainly a smart idea from Freddy because, of course, that Ronvid was played this round, so if it was Armorsmith, it would go all the way back up to 10 points. So definitely don't want to kill the Armorsmith there, Freddy, but Life Coach is going to start resurrecting.
But she brooks no insult.
Too spectacular. I mean, still Warmonger is rather sadly discard the Lacerate.
Unfortunately for him, there isn't yet a unit in Skellige that reses spells. That kind of magician has not been born into this world just yet, but it's just units for now, and that Lacerate is going to be stuck in that graveyard. And Life Coach, I think, really sad to see that because it's one of the, I think maybe he might have even just included it for the Northern Realms matches, knowing that these decks normally tend to stack so much with crewmen. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that he's, you know, it's such a smart inclusion, but we are playing a card game, you know, sometimes things don't go your way, and Freddy is just going to keep stacking up that row, which of course is going to make the Whale Harpooner really hurt when it hits that Ulderic, but outside of that, there's just not many options for the Harpooner.
And this would have been such a juicy Lacerate. I think Life Coach really sad to see this board in this current state without having Lacerate in his hand. And already, you know, Freddy really thinning his deck, both players thinning their decks. This is what makes decks so consistent. And Freddy down to 6 cards, so many gold still left in that gold and silvers left in that pile he has there, but you know, no chance for him to bring those out.
Yeah, I believe 4 of the remaining 6 cards for Freddy are gold or silver, because of course we have John Natalis, Han Marvin's Blue Dream, Dijkstra, Commander's Horn, and
we
Margarita.
Serve her
I apologize,
who is
I can't
virgin,
count. That's
mother,
5.
and crone.
So that is such a savage draw.
Down in here.
And Life Coach, I mean, he just res the Raider. He doesn't have really the chance to res anything else. He has dead Battle Maidens. He doesn't have a dead Armorsmith to res and heal up. So maybe now regretting not having Game King's version of King Brand with 2 Armorsmiths. I mean, playing a Raider from hand and then rezzing it in 1 round, even if he went into this round a card up, and still he's so many points behind, this might just spell a ton of trouble. Shawnee going to the front row, Freddy may be thinking twice about that last round, maybe just remembering and saying, whoops, I might have made a mistake. But he
little does he know.
gives that Harpooner target at least for, you know, some first-time value for Life Coach, but still, he's so many points ahead.
Yeah, he is so many points ahead, and with those harpooners failing to find purchase against merely a single stacked row with very few units to move in, you know, already Shani can't take as much damage as
The
he is on that row.
goddess
So
protect you
I think
from
these
all
well harpooners
evil.
are really going to be blunt suck for Life Coach right now.
And again, you play one raider.
Oh
it's
man,
bad.
rezzing 2 raiders.
You res
Down
one
here.
raider, it's pretty bad. But you res, you know, 2 raiders and playing one from hand, it's game losing, I think. And we're going to see maybe the biggest harpooner in existence, killing that Ulrich, or getting very close at least. It'll be a very close matchup there. But, I mean, not going to be hitting enough value to win this game, I think.
Yeah, I think Freddy, still scared of the last ray, is playing around it a little bit, but if he could see the contents of Life Coach's couple cards, bear in mind, Life Coach is 2 cards up, but he's still just going to fail to find so much value.
Yeah, I mean, playing, I think it's going to be almost a 19, I believe, point card here with the Harpooner. You know what, you might think, oh, I'll catch up. I mean, this card is great. You know, 19 points, it's a bronze. But instead, he's going to be moving a card to the front and then moving into the back with the second
So I think
Harpooner.
the marching orders will be a reinforced ballista. Nope, it's not. It's the same strength. It's
What can I
Margarita.
do for you?
So Margarita doesn't really have a fantastic target here. It could be, it can't heal up anything, of course, because that siege tower is still above 8. So he just goes for the classic Priestess of Freya lock.
Yeah, Margarita great against monsters and other factions. Against Skellige, not so much, because they rely a lot on mostly just base strength. And here we see the Harpooner, the final one, getting quite a bit of damage on this Ulrich, but it's just not enough to win here.
No, it's just not. So Freddy is going to go 2-0 up in a matchup that looked like he was in serious trouble earlier on. That Wolfsbane was set up so well. You know, forced Radovid to not really find his value. Freddy giving a little nod of the head there. Freddy looking very, very pleased with himself. But now he has his cursed Skellige to win with. What do you think of this?
I mean, cursed, I want to talk about that later, but the most important thing here, I think, not just talking about, you know, this last game, but the fact that Freddy was able to pass without letting Skellige create a graveyard with a lot of units and making Life Coach res 2 raiders in a round 3. Playing a raider from hand, playing Ulrich from hand as well, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it's not fantastic, really. I mean, it's not ideal.
I mean, that is... Well, thank you. That is... Yeah, you know, your heart aches when you see somebody have to res 1 raider. 2 is just unbelievable. Oh, I quite like this. Service in the house. Thank you very much. Yeah, it is absolutely just horrifying. But 2 raiders, like Priestess of Freya, the round 3 powerhouse, you know, Battle Maidens, Warmongers, 2 raiders. Yeah.
But this is the important part to note here. This isn't bad luck from Life Coach. This is Freddy analyzing Life Coach's deck, knowing what Skellige does as a faction, not just an archetype, but as a faction, which is res units, and say, I'm gonna, you know, you pass round 1 early. I'm gonna go into round 2. I'm gonna pass early as well. Get rid of your Wolfsbane. Take that card down and accept it. Say, I don't mind. I don't have my golds, and still I'm gonna go into the next round, a card down. And even then, you know, not allowing Life Coach to play maybe Harpooner or Warmonger to be able to res later, not killing them either. I mean,
Controlled the graveyard so well.
Attacking different units, not killing any units to give Life Coach that extra res target. And that made the game, I think.
One of the key questions as well is, what did we just get handed by these mercenaries? Because it's something in a mug.
I don't want to get poisoned, so Merchant, you can have
I'm going to go
first
for
taste.
it.
I'm going to continue analyzing this next matchup. Freddy, he's
Oh,
left.
that's strong.
That's some strong stuff. I'm going to not partake. Thank you very much. Cursed, I mean, you have to win 1 match. This is a deck that has been not criticized, but there are some questions around it. It hasn't been a tier 1 deck in the meta, I think. No one's really analyzed it and said, this is a great deck, I'm going to bring it to every tournament. It's only Freddy bringing it this time around. Is it going to win at least 1 game?
I think it will. I think it will. Like we mentioned, it can perform very, very well against Nilfgaard, like Freddy actually saw in his testing of this deck. So it is quite literally tried and tested. And Freddy's got 3 shots with it. So you gotta think he knows what he's doing.
Not only that, but one of those shots, this next one, is going to be on Redcoin, going second, having that advantage. And if he loses this game, which would be bad for Freddy, but not, you know, it's not going to end his life. The next game, Life Coach again has the red coin. That's fine. He might lose that one as well. But he has 2 chances, you know, 5th game in a 3-2 series. Freddy started off with red coin, started off going second. He has that, you know, that last chance in the last game as well to maybe have an upper edge. So it's looking good for Freddy. I mean, 2-0 up, Life Coach with a reverse sweep going into a blue coin this next game. It's tough for him, but if someone can do it, I think it is Life Coach.
Yeah, and it's one of the really interesting things that's about to happen is Life Coach has got to go Blue Coin. Typically, one of the decks you'd feel more comfortable going Blue Coin with is Nilfgaard Spies, but Freddy is targeting Nilfgaard Spies. So if you're Life Coach, how do you react to this? What do you run with on the Blue Coin?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you have Unseen Elder, for example, that has kind of a win condition that doesn't really depend too much on card advantage or last say with the carryover, if that carryover isn't stopped. And Cursed, I mean, it has some options, I think, to maybe stop that Consume engine with the Coral, for example, as well, and with maybe Lugos and Muzzle. But in general, there is no real clear lock in Skellige. There isn't. Donor hasn't been played in a while. He's a different kind of card right now. But Coral is a card that definitely stops Neckers.
Yeah, it certainly is. And by the way, just because I am concerned for your well-being as a responsible co-caster, that is actually just water. You can drink it. But yeah, it is going to be pretty interesting to see. Cursed Kraken Crate coming up from Freddy, which I am very, very excited to see. And it looks like we're just heading in to the next game now. And Life Coach is playing. Can we snipe it from up here? Oh, I can't quite make out his screen.
We'll see it soon enough. Luckily, Freddy can't make out his screen either. They are sitting opposed to each other. So
that would be problematic.
That would definitely be an issue. But we're going to see Cursed, and we're going to see, like we said, Unseen Elder, a deck that doesn't care too much about the blue coin, that can go first and still win games quite easily as long as its win condition, the Necker train, is not stopped.
Yeah, it certainly is. And this is going to be a proper fist fight because Life Coach's Consume is a very greedy variant, utilizing Necker Warriors to really just keep churning out those Neckers. Whereas, you know, if you leave Cursed Skellige unchecked, it can also slam out huge units. So we are going to see some serious points come out here.
And Freddy, he doesn't have the Jenga, for example, to create that huge point swing early on in round one. But he does have, you know, Morkvarg, Olgierd, carryover for sure, tempos with Crack as well, a lot of points.
Yeah, it's a really, really sort of dominating decks by both players. These are both normally decks that it's like, well, if you don't react to me, you know, maybe, you know, if you don't coral me when I'm playing Cursed, I'm going to be fine. But both players are playing what could be viewed as very, very proactive decks. However, Freddy's does have the elements of control. Karen potentially not finding too great a target against Skellige, but Coral against monsters is a different story.
Two important things to note here. We see Coral in Freddy's hand. Coral is a card that, you know, gets rid of a Necker no matter what. And what do we see in Life Coach's hand? Only one Necker and no Shadow this time around just yet. It might be pulled from Gills, for example, but in his current hand, he only has one Necker. Yesterday he had two Neckers and Shadow ready to go just from the start of that round one against Game King. In this case, it's not, it's not happening. So Life Coach has to be very careful.
Do we just see the pass?
He might pass. I think he knows his matchups very well. He knows when to pass, and he knows that blue coin is a disadvantage, and maybe passing doesn't give him last say, but it might give him a way to kind of, you know, go into a long round with Brands, which is, you know, it's going to create a lot of tempo and a lot of, you know, I think a great board stay in the long round 3, or go for, you know, a mid-range round and create carryover in round 2.
Well, there is the pass in traditional Life Coach fashion at the last second of the rope time and deciding to pass. As we have mentioned many a time, this player thoroughly known for taking his time when it comes to making key decisions. So I think that he's just looking for that second Necker or a Shadow, because if that Necker got dropped and it got coralled, it's game over.
But Life Coach has passed. He's lost control of this game, and he's lost control of his deck. He still has Harpies in his deck. He still has Roach in his deck. He has cards that can really mess up his mulligan. A Guardian hasn't been played, but his mulligans are going to be just as bad as if it had been played.
They're going to be horrendous. So Morkvarg played from hand. Just some context, this Kraken Crate list runs Olgierd as well. So essentially the idea is you play one of them from hand and then the other one from Crack. So we will see Freddy establishing that Olgierd carryover relatively soon, I imagine.
As long as
he just drew it.
As long as he mulligans the Olgierd, if he wants to do that. He keeps the Marauder. He gets Skjall, a great thing to have as well. He hasn't drawn any Berserkers. He has 3 in his deck, and he really wants to thin those out, I think, in round 1 to have the res targets for round 3. He might find one off Skjall, which is, I think, the best option for him right now. So definitely with a Battle Maiden in hand.
Yeah, it looks like he's considering the Crack, debating the casters, as is becoming a tradition now. But I would expect to see it set up fairly quickly, because Life Coach does have the muzzle, but it would only be able to hit the full strength Morkvarg, because of course Olgierd would come out as much stronger.
And even then, Life Coach knows that Freddy has muzzle as well. I think he wants to definitely play to maybe counter muzzle Freddy if he tries to steal a Necker, for example. That's one way that Life Coach can do it. But we're looking at the hand from Life Coach again. There aren't Harpies, and there isn't Roach, but we're seeing only one Necker once again. I mean, he might be in trouble. I mean,
yeah, this is getting to really dangerous territory for Life Coach. Essentially, he's got a couple of ways out, the primary one being Gels into a Shadow. That would work, but honestly, this is a rough position and a very bad hand for Life Coach, which is ironic because, of course, we talk about the sort of, you know, the infamous monster mulligan, and when you don't see those Harpies, you don't see those Roach, you're kind of like, hey, everything's cushy, but all of a sudden, you only have a single Necker, and you know you're playing against somebody who has Coral.
I mean, Freddy has control of this round. He can really decide how far to push, and he can really push, you know, the big cursed archetype units like the Berserker Marauders to get to very high strengths. And Life Coach isn't really running a unit that really deals with high value targets. He doesn't have a Margarita in his monsters deck, obviously. He doesn't have, you know, an Igni either. And we see the first Necker coming out. Will Freddy be able to deal with this immediately?
This is going to be dealt with, I think, because Freddy essentially has double answers in hand, right? He's got the muzzle and he's got the Coral. Of course, muzzle could bait out Life Coach's muzzle and he could then Coral it on top. So he would actually get some serious resources out of Life Coach were that to happen.
He also has the Lugos from this Royal Decree as well. Lugos, of course, kills and doesn't lock, so it would bring out the next Necker and still have that last chance for Life Coach to maybe Necker Warrior and create more copies before it's dead forever. But right now, he can still, obviously, just use the Coral first.
Yeah, and that Coral is going to transform that Necker into a Jade figurine. Now, if you're not used to that card, when something is transformed, it is essentially banished from the game. It cannot be resurrected. It does not exist in the game anymore because it is transformed into a 2-strength Jade figurine.
I suppose.
Exactly, so there is no chance to get that from the graveyard with this Blizzard, for example. It doesn't go to the graveyard, it goes to the Shadow Realm, and there is no more Neckers in this game right now. At least in the board state.
That is a really scary position for Life Coach to be in. Where do you proceed from here?
He has to find, I think, the Shadow Gills maybe. I mean, there really is another chance. If you don't play Necker Warriors early onto Neckers, you miss a lot of consume ticks from the Vranch, from the Unseen Elder, for example. So this is the problem with this deck. It goes all in on Neckers. If you don't have Neckers, your game plan is to some extent ruined.
Yeah, and the astonishing thing is, you know, we're going on and on about Life Coach's problems, but Freddy's hand is looking pretty good. He's got his Royal Decree that could be used on a Lugos. He's got, you know, he's got his Skjal, he's got his Gremist, he's got a Marauder, he's got a Battle Maiden. Freddy's hand's looking good, and Life Coach is looking highly problematic. And here comes the K-Rock.
He is missing a Berserker. I think that might be trouble. He does play the Karen first to get that Roach out before he plays Gills, because you definitely don't want to see, you know, a Gills bringing you your Roach as a silver instead of your Shadow. That would not be good.
You don't want to see that at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday when you're in your sweatpants. You definitely don't want to see that in the semi-finals of Challenger. So wise move from Life Coach to get that Roach out of the deck.
That's exactly true, and lucky for Life Coach. Well, not lucky. I think he analyzed this. There is no renew in Freddy's deck. He can't renew that Coral to get yet another Necker banished to the Shadow Realm. So lucky for him, he knows the opponent's deck. Again, playing into that. I mean, knowing your opponent's deck can open up so many different ways to play and strategies as well.
I mean, Life Coach he's got a rough time ahead of him though, because essentially the Roach has come out, but there's still Toad Prince, Manticore, Abaya, and Monster's Nest. So he has a 20% chance of seeing the Shadow that he wants.
He's in trouble. I think he's definitely in trouble.
My goodness, this is not shaping up well for Life Coach. Out comes the Raging Berserker. The young Berserker. It's going to be sitting in the melee.
This is the card that Freddy always wanted to see. It has a great battle main synergy, and Karen has already been played. Karen is a huge way to deal with this, but it's already been played. Muzzle can steal it and can really mess up the plans for Freddy, but I mean, we see Muzzle with you know, Freddy with Muzzle as well, not Muzzle with Freddy. So there is an option to steal that right back, so he's not too worried, I think.
I think that Life Coach is in such a sticky situation. Yeah, as you say, Muzzle can answer the Raging Berserker, but even if it doesn't, like, obviously Freddy doesn't know his opponent's hand, right? He's essentially waiting for the Necker Storm. But it's not starting as early as it should have, so Freddy's going to start sensing something's wrong, and when he smells blood, he could just go in for the kill.
Yeah, I think these are decks that you kind of know when it's not working out. Neckers are plays that are made like round one every single time most of the time, and we see Muzzle being hovered by Life Coach. This is a great steal. He denies so much value from a curse deck, but Freddy, he's planned for this, the Muzzle meta. He knows what's up with the Muzzle man, Life Coach. He's going to steal it right back and you know, get that Battle Maiden synergy all over again.
Yeah, the Muzzle, you know, the best counter to Muzzle is a good old-fashioned Muzzle, or if you're spicy, a Hand Marvin's. But that Berserker is going to be coming straight back over. But back to core game plans. Even if that Berserker is a nice steal, how does Life Coach win this game if that Gills doesn't hit the Shadow?
Even if it does hit the Shadow, he gets a Necker out, and Freddy has Muzzle. And there is no counter Muzzle, there is no Blue Dream for Life Coach in his deck. So, I mean, Life Coach is going, he has to be in a risky position, he has to play risky plays because he knows he's in trouble. But Freddy knows this and decides, you know, I'm not going to Muzzle that back right now, I'm just going to destroy your win condition if you do get that Shadow.
Yeah, this is really rough. The mocking laugh from the Berserker Marauder. Just wrecking Life Coach's feelings. This is savage. I mean, he's playing tempo pretty nicely, getting Vrans out, but Freddy is Freddy. He knows something is wrong with Life Coach's deck. He's saying, okay, you're playing nice little tempo pieces like the Muzzle, like the Vran, but you aren't playing your strategy. You don't have Neckers.
And I mean, most of the time that is the win condition. There are ways that Life Coach can get, Caretaker, fairly decent plays in round 3 that can get him the win in a short round. And of course, I mean, he's almost catching up here and he's still a card ahead. So it's not over yet for Life Coach just yet. But every brand consume that isn't, that doesn't have extra Neckers copied in the deck is a point loss for all those extra Neckers from the Necker Warriors. And seeing 7-point Necker Warriors not hitting anything, might just be Harpies, for example, instead of Neckers. That might be the plan there.
Yeah, this is just going to be tempo. It's just going to be eating up those Harpies eggs and, getting Harpies out. But Life Coach is stalling. He's playing tempo to avoid signaling that he has no game plan.
Or he might be adapting his game plan altogether. I mean, if you can't copy Neckers, copy the next best thing. The next best thing is those Harpies right there. I mean, you have the chance to get the Slizzard into the Harpy next round. You have an extra Vrand there to consume some eggs and also some Beast to get the next Harpies out. So it's a viable strategy. If you can't copy Neckers, just copy the Harpies, and that's really your secondary win condition.
But is that enough to keep up with Cursed Skellige, who can put out those explosive Marauders?
Keep together!
It's tough to say. I mean, especially if an Archer comes out, says keep together, and then destroys pretty much your whole family of eggs.
Exactly. No omelette for Life Coach. The Harpies do fall in the right row, though, for the Vrand to keep eating, so, silver linings. But we're going to see these Harpies keep coming out, but there is already an 18-point disparity between these two players. And while Life Coach is up cards, some of those cards are like Slizzard, which simply won't be doing much. Yeah, I mean, we might see... It's really hard to say. I mean, Freya don't have great targets right now in round 2, so there is a point where Freddy has to kind of, stop and say, I have to get out of this round, right now, and maybe let Life Coach not copy any Harpies, not copy any Neckers, and go for a pretty weak round 3. It's going to be interesting to see when Freddy actually decides to pass. We see Coral in his graveyard, but no bronze units for Freya or Secretary for Therese. Yeah, absolutely. He does need to establish those targets, but he can do that with the Brennus and a blood-curdling roar, and, well, especially when all of a sudden the Battle Maiden dies, that becomes a lot easier. But Freddy going for the pass, going on to equal cards, and Life Coach looking at a pretty weak round 3. This is a great pass from Freddy. I think he sees two Vrand, which are two units that, when played immediately, don't generate that much tempo, but over a long round, they give your Neckers a ton of value, and he says, if I get out of this round now, I deny all that value. And also, Necker Warrior cannot be played onto the Harpies right now, and all 3 Harpies are out already, so it means that it denies that secondary win condition, and he forces those Necker Warriors to hit Neckers the next round. So it's I think Freddy definitely knows what he's doing, and he definitely read that pass really well. Yeah, I think so. I think that's a nice pass from Freddy, and it actually demands significant resources to be committed by Life Coach. So I think he gets slizzard out at Kaleno. Like, he can get a little bit of carryover with that, but this is looking bad. It's tough. He has to definitely, play some carryover here, play, at least, we see a little bit of a point out there. Not too big, you can play pretty much any card and still get it, but he has to see what he really wants to keep for round 3 and try and save the best cards he has to finish round 3 strong when your game plan just isn't working. Yeah, really unfortunate draws for the Life Coach here, but he still has Gels, he still has Caretakers, he's not out of it yet. Unseen Elder, Caretaker, and Gels, very, very powerful cards. If we see Necker come down, though, we still have Muzzle in Freddy's hand. He was very patient. He didn't steal back that Raging Berserker. He decided that he wasn't going to go too far into this next round and say, you can keep that. And he does have more carryover. I mean, when you have more carryover than a greedy consume deck, you're doing something right. Yeah, and those triple Priestesses and Sigtripper offering all sorts of res options for Freddy. And the likelihood is he can just pound for pound win this. This is the most important draw here from Life Coach. Yes. Necker Warriors, not so great in round 3 when you haven't copied your Neckers early. And even when you don't have Neckers, it's even worse. So he's going to get rid of one of them and hope he draws a Necker. Monster's Nest instead. Increasing the chance of a Shadow from Gels. But Shadow just gets muzzled anyway, so there's really, the Neckers are not going to be win condition, I can guarantee that. Yeah, the Neckers are not going to be win condition. I think you're absolutely correct on that one. So this is going to be a very, very interesting decision-making process for Life Coach. If anyone can handle a situation like this, though, it is him. Unless, of course, the Neckers are boosted up higher than 8 because Muzzle only hits targets under 8, and we did see quite a few rank consumes actually. I think they're probably on 6 or 7. I apologize, we don't have any means of accessing that right now, but I would imagine they're on 6 or 7. We've seen a few rank consumes, and Unseen Elder is still available to eat maybe these little beasts, not get much in terms of tempo, but he does play around that boosting up those Neckers just a tiny bit. But if they were to be on... Actually, yeah, if they were above 8, even a Lugos wouldn't kill the initial one, so could be potentially saving here, but really rough. Out comes the Vrand.
Is Lugos right here the best option? I mean, you know that you can kill that Brand that can generate a ton of value later on, and there's a chance. I mean, 7 points is still decent as long as we have a 7 strength unit in Life Coach in Freddy's deck. If he decides not to, he can wait. I mean, obviously there's 2 turns until that Brand consumes again, so he has a bit of a window there.
Yeah, I think he may just choose to go for his scale here. Here it comes. There's the scale.
Together.
And that is going to be playing a Raging Berserker. So yeah, he's got another turn to kill that. I would expect to see that Lugos, however.
Yeah, I mean, when Lugos is just value in the end, you definitely want to get, you know, as much value, but definitely utility as well. And killing that Brand gives you that extra bit of value that you save and deny from Life Coach's game plan.
Yeah, for sure. It is a really, really precarious situation for Life Coach here. He's just finding a win condition. I think that would be the... What is he choosing to play there? Unfortunately, we can't see the card due to the overlay, but...
It is a card.
It is a card. Life Coach will be playing the card this turn. It is the Toad Prince. Going to eat a Necker Warrior, of course, but not representing much value.
He doesn't draw into Necker. I mean, Neckers, again, very shy creatures, hiding away again. We saw it in Gwent's land, but once again, and the muzzle on the Brand instead of the Lugos, which also works. You're denying the muzzle on the Neckers, but instead you say, I have a chance to muzzle here as a 7-strength unit. I'm going to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just 14 points of gold from that muzzle, which is great because, of course, you don't want to deny yourself. You can't pass up a good opportunity waiting for a perfect one, or you'll just find that muzzle is dead.
And we've seen it before. I mean, Emissary, muzzle on an Emissary, 4-point swing, not ideal. You see a 40-point swing, you say, I like points, I'm going to take it.
Exactly. Yeah, well, based on the current board state, it was a 14 or a 6, right? So you've got to take it. So this is going to be Life Coach's deciding moment. Is the Gels coming out? Here it comes.
And do we see Shadow?
Even if we do, well, you know, it's probably boosted higher than Lugos.
Naivety is a fool's blessing.
There is the Shadow.
Shadow was the only card left, so we're definitely going to see it. It's a guarantee, basically.
All right,
And
so
the muzzle is definitely not available for those Neckers. They are very strong Neckers, 13 points already. Unseen Elder can consume those Neckers to get another one left that is in the deck still, and Necker Warrior can still copy them, although, you know, obviously not ideal at this point in the game.
I believe he actually got a little bit fortunate because I believe there was a
Bow
50-50
before
between Imperial
mortal
Manticore or Shadow.
That is true, it is still
So
left.
you got pretty fortunate.
You are correct.
I need your hand!
And we see here some thinning from Freddy Babes with that Battle Maiden and Raging Berserker synergy. And then of course he has the Archer in his graveyard to maybe ping that last Raging Berserker as well to get that extra bit of value. Unseen Elder, it's going to be a really decent play. Monster's Nest as well. Going to find decent amount of value. Caretaker, you know, great gold. Necker Warrior, not so great. I mean, it's going to get a few more Neckers, but there aren't that many, you know, ways to consume these Neckers, so it won't matter in the end. And no Harpies to copy either, so it's hard to say who wins it just now. I mean, Life Coach has some great plays left, but Freddy as well. I mean, Royal Decree, Freya's, Grimace, plays you like to see in round 3.
Yeah, both players looking at very, very powerful hands right now. I mean, you know, even though Life Coach's game plan hasn't gone according to what he was wanting, he's still got that Elder to bring out Necker. He's still got Monster's Nest. He's got Caretaker. These are fantastic cards, but they're going up against the power reses of those Skellige units.
And this Caretaker can steal the Archer and deny that Raging Berserker
By the
synergy, which
rates
is
of
absolutely
Morhawk.
massive.
Yeah, that's a great little point steal for Life Coach there.
And the time running out, I mean, in Life Coach fashion, really deciding what the best option is to hit here. Of course, there is a single Armor Smith in Freddy's deck, so he knows he may play around damage if he can, and hit boosted units, for example, where it can't get healed up. So every little point might just matter.
Yeah, this one is certainly going to come down to the wire. Bear in mind, Life Coach is playing for survival.
I
But
make the
Lugos
laws
can
here.
discard another Archer from his deck, so it's all good. Freddy has all these answers to anything that Life Coach brings his way.
Yeah, that is a huge Lugos, re-enabling that Raging Berserker synergy, which is just such a valuable thing, essentially adding 4 points to the drop value of that Archer. So really, really important Lugos to see coming out there from Freddy.
And could he have killed something different there? I mean, obviously, I think Archer is now going to be the biggest unit in Life Coach's graveyard because there was only a 7-strength Necker Warrior, if I'm not mistaken, and the Archer is an 8. If you would have killed the Toad Prince, maybe it would have affected the final score for that Monster's Nest into Ghoul. So it's an iffy. I mean, we'll have to see that later on, but it could be, you know, that 1 point might be worth it.
Yeah, this is a nail-biting round for sure, though. Life Coach playing for survival. Freddy playing for the opportunity to 3-0 Life Coach and claim his place in the finals later on, which is an absolutely crazy prospect. Not many people would have predicted this scoreline.
And the Ghoul definitely hitting, like we said, that Archer and getting that 1 extra point instead of the Necker Warrior. So if Life Coach wins by a point, then I'll have a talk with Freddy and tell him that he definitely messed that one up.
Well, I'm sure that Pandad will rain down some fury on him if that is the case, but it looks like Freddy's still got some pretty powerful cards at his disposal. Double res and a Grimace.
And we see Unseen Elder, a lot of points on these Neckers, going to bring out the last Necker as well. And there is no Igni from Freddy, so no
That
way
is
to
your
really punish
bloody
that.
faith?
But Necker
Truly?
Warrior, not the card you want to see.
No, it's certainly not, but it's a decent value Grimace. And while Life Coach is going to have points from this Unseen Elder, this is going to become so close because the Elder will do great work, but it is just, is it enough?
It's going to be, it's hard to call. You have to talk about the Necker buffs and also the last Necker coming in. Necker Warrior 7-point play, not really affecting the gameplay at all in terms of what it brings out, because there is only one Necker left and only one way to bring out that Necker, so not going to affect that at all. Freddy with 2 Freyas left. Can 2 Freyas beat Unseen Elder in a fight? We'll find out.
With a 1-point advantage, this is going to come right down to the wire. This is absolutely nail-biting. This could decide who is going to be taking on Colomon in the finals.
I think the Archer and the Raging Berserker, it's still a massive point play, not just
Modern
11
Freya
points,
is
but it's going to end up being a 16-point play.
no
So,
insult.
I mean, will that be enough to win it? Plus the second Freya with the Marauder as well, with so many cursed units already in this board. I mean, I think it's just too many points for Life Coach to handle.
I think it's too many points too. I think Unseen Elder's going to do some work here, but will it be enough? I think it would be enough were Freddy not to have that additional Priestess, but we shall see, because Unseen, pretty good card.
I mean, already there is a point gap there, but this Freddy, I think Freddy knows.
Mother and
Freddy's got it 3-0ing Life Coach. That is an unbelievable result that not many people would have predicted. The United Kingdom's Freddy taking his place in the finals tomorrow.